Welcome to the Ultimate Music Teachers Productivity and Profitability Podcast. I'm your host, Glory St. Germain. Tune in to discover how you can unleash your teaching potential and turn your passion for music education into profit. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Ultimate Music Teachers Productivity and Profitability Podcast, where we explore a fascinating world of music education and entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Glory St. Germain, and today we have a special guest who embodies the spirit of music, culture, and business. Georgina Castro has a BA in Music Industry Studies and has carved a unique path in the music world, from being a music editor for a local magazine to managing tours for artists, which I'm sure was a blast. She's been having an amazing time. And now regional HR business partner at AEG Presents. Georgina's journey is as diverse as it is inspiring. Born in Los Angeles and raised in Las Vegas, she's the oldest of two daughters in a family with rich Mexican roots. A classical guitar player since the age of 14, Georgina's musical tastes range from the Beatles to Guns N' Roses and Pink Floyd, a girl after my own heart. Let's dive into her story and her insights. Welcome, Georgina. Georgina, can you share with us what sparked your passion for music and how it led you to pursue a career in the music business?
Thanks, Glory. Thanks for having me. Yeah, definitely. I'd love to kind of share what sparked my passion for music. It started with kind of finding, actually, funnily enough, my mom's CD collection that included artists like Bon Jovi, Guns N' Roses, Elton John, and just kind of like putting them in our CD player. And as soon as I heard Guns N' Roses, I was like, this is what I want to be a part of. So that was kind of like my introduction to this is what I want to do. That got me started in music. My mom was a big concert advocate, so she would love to take me to shows. You know, when I was younger, I was really into, like the pop things. And she took me to the Bite of Las Vegas, which is something that they had back when I was growing up in Las Vegas. And Michelle Branch was on stage and she was a singer, songwriter, guitarist. And I just thought it was so cool that she was kind of on stage playing guitar. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. And she shared a story that she started playing guitar when she was 16. And she was, I think at the time that I saw her, maybe in her later teens, early 20s. And my mom said, imagine if you start playing guitar now. And I was 12 years old. And that's kind of where it started. I went to a performing arts high school, and that was very intimidating, to say the least. It was a lot of practice, a lot of dedication. I love where I learned to play classical guitar, where I learned a lot about music theory. I loved it. It was a great journey. Ultimately, I found out it wasn't for me. I wasn't a performer. I didn't want to be on stage. The limelight was not something that I enjoyed. And I just kind of always was more fascinated in the business part of things. So just kind of my segue into the sparking my career in music.
Wow, that's incredible. And isn't it amazing that it was your mom who said, "Ooh, you should start playing guitar." Like, really, sometimes that's how it starts, that little inspiration, from our family. And you had a great mom who got you, going to these concerts. So you've actually had a diverse career path, from music editing to tour management and now in HR at AEG Presents. So how have these tons of varied experiences really shaped your approach to the current role that you're in now?
Yeah, I think I was just still trying to figure it out. I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I had graduated from my performing arts high school. I did all of the auditions to get into Cal Arts. I don't think I auditioned for Berklee School of Music. Juilliard was on mind. I was just thinking of all the things that I could do musically when I kind of learned that music business was a path through my research of looking through going to a performing arts college. So I found music business. That was really fun. I got to learn a lot. There were so many different facets that I just had no idea about. And ultimately, my college where I got my degree, they required you to do 2 internships before you graduated. It was a requirement in order to graduate. So I found myself editing for a music magazine, which I was like, oh, this is so fun. I am a big fan of Almost Famous, and I was living, my best life, interviewing artists, watching the shows, kind of emulating that. I thought that I wanted to write for the Rolling Stone. It was the whole, that was my vision. So I did that for quite a few years. I started to meet a lot of artists, a lot of local artists. It got more involved in that. And that kind of led me to just out of the, kindness of my heart, like helping bands out, helping them book shows, like connecting them with the people that like I would meet just by being at the show. And that kind of led me to like managing the local bands, going on tours, to South by Southwest, going on tours up the coast in California. And then I think the biggest tour that we did was going overseas and doing the same tour that the Beatles did from Liverpool to Hamburg. And we hit the Cavern Club, we hit Kaiser Keller. We did the exact same tour. We stopped in Amsterdam, played all the same rooms that the Beatles played just because they were very rock and roll. Big inspiration was the Beatles. My kind of music up my alley. So I really believed in it and we did it and it was fantastic and it was fun. I definitely realized that during that tour that it took a lot to manage and specifically artists and kind of be on top of them. And I just didn't feel like that was my fit. And I was juggling other jobs as well. And I was already in the HR space. And so I kind of stepped away from music for a little bit and found myself missing it. I started kind of even just volunteering my time to take tickets at the door, at the Roxy, at the Viper Room, just the like iconic places on the Sunset Strip, just because I knew that music was still in my heart. It's still what I wanted to do. And kind of during that time where I was feeling like a little bit defeated that I was really never going to be in the music industry. And I kind of just had to accept my path as in HR, just in this other industry, which was hospitality, which I love travel. So it was like, okay, this isn't horrible. I found myself interviewing for actually Live Nation and AEG Presents at the same time. AEG Presents gave me the call back and it just felt like the right and like perfect fit for me. So I've been there for 2 years now. And it has been a whirlwind. And now I support all of our touring divisions. So kind of like coming full circle, some of the people that I work with managed some of the bands that I used to do interviews with. So just kind of a cool way to start out this like new career. And I know this is kind of like where I want to stay and what I want to do.
It's so exciting to hear your story, Georgina. Thank you for sharing it because I feel like I'm kind of traveling with you. And I think because of all of these things, and how cool is it to say, yeah, we did the Beatles tour and we had all this fun. And I'm sure everyone absolutely had a blast. And it is a lot of work being on tour. I produced a few tours for my husband's show as well. So I know the footsteps of getting things done and still managing a group so that they show up and do all their things because they're the artists. And that is an incredible skill set that you have because you have such diversity in, being a writer and interviewing people and being on tour and also being a musician yourself and who's someone, obviously you're classically trained in guitar. How do you feel your musical background influences the work that you're doing in the music industry, especially in HR and business?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that actually, because I think it plays such a big part in my being able to understand a perspective of an artist, understanding what it takes, understanding the time, the dedication, maybe not all musicians, most musicians probably are not classically trained, but a lot of musicians still have to put in the work. There are still hours. I spent the hours in the recording studios with the bands. I know what the writing process is like. I even delved into songwriting for a little bit with one of the artists that I was managing. So I understand how like defeating and what that process is like for an artist. So I think for me to understand that, it helps a lot in my role because as an HR business partner for all of my touring groups, I know that, our job is to promote the show, is to make sure that the show goes well and to make sure like that we are there for the artist need, the agent needs. And, there are some times when it's like, oh, okay, this artist is X, Y, and Z, like we're trying to like do the best that we can. And I know that like my job is to not to support the artist, but to support my team
Right.
through the things that they're going through on the road and understanding that. So I feel like my path is really from, understanding all the way from the artist perspective to our tour manager's
Yeah.
perspective, to like understanding what the managers go through and they how communicate to our tour managers and the agents and things like that. So I feel like I really have like a good understanding of the full circle cycle. And I think it's helped me. It's helped me a lot. I knew the stress I was under doing it for a local band. I can imagine the stress people are under when we're doing it for the Stones, when we're doing it for Elton, when we're doing it for Taylor Swift. Like that is on levels beyond my wildest experiences out on the road. So I think back to that and I'm like, okay, like the artists took the time, maybe not in a classical way, maybe they weren't like trained, but the dedication that they took to kind of do their craft. So I always kind of resonate and I understand because I'm one of those people that like I definitely have to understand like roots
Yeah.
of problems before I like step in and I'm like, hey, here's my solution.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of allows me to like relate back to some of those things and understand, when a person is stressed or when a person is like, hey, I have to deal with this. And, how can we do this? How can we make it more efficient? So definitely
It's
helped me a lot.
absolutely. I mean, I think that it's a very unique skill set that you bring to the table, being from a classically trained performer to knowing what it's like to being on stage, to preparing for a show, to being on tour, to everything that you're doing. It's incredible. And you mentioned the College Connection program. Could you just elaborate on how this initiative is impacting music education and creating opportunities for students that are interested in these live music careers?
Yeah, absolutely. This is kind of one of my favorite things to talk about. So I have a counterpart that works out of our Atlanta office, and she kind of oversees like the Southwestern regions and stuff. And I think both of us kind of early on found the passion to want to like give back. She's big on community service, and I love that. I wish I had more time to do it, but I do know like there are certain things that I'm very passionate about, and it's giving people the opportunity that I feel I didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have mentorship. I didn't get a behind the scenes tour of this is what it's like to work music industry. I didn't get put in front of the professionals that were in the jobs that I wanted one day. So we thought about how we could do that within these colleges, within the people that are studying this kind of craft. So we found the opportunity in we support a lot of festivals, a lot of venues, a lot of tours. So I think we launched our first one in Nashville, and Nashville has great music business programs. Had I done more research and had I known, I would have found myself at, one of those schools, but they have a great music business program. So we started there. We had a Q&A panel with the students and some of the marketing people, the production people, the talent buyers for the tours, the venues, and the festivals. So we set up a panel with all of them. We had kind of an open Q&A with them and the students. We took the students behind the scenes of like the tour setup and like the venue setup and kind of everything that it took to set up the tour or venue or show, prepping and things like that. We gave them the tour. And then afterwards, we gave them the tickets to experience it. So it's kind of like a 360 experience, right? So you understand what the job is, you get behind the scenes of the job and what everybody is doing to make that show happen. And then you get to watch it live. And I think like that's something that's like pretty fulfilling just to be able to kind of like, I know that's my favorite part is when I get to go see one of our shows that we promoted, produced, and I'm just like, wow, this is what it's for, like this is why we're doing it. So we give the students that experience too, because we do want them to see and we want to be as transparent as we can. And like, some of the obstacles we come through, some of the things, what it actually looks like, I think there's a very big kind of sexy perspective of a music industry. And, yes, sometimes, but I think if you're on the business side, more oftentimes than not, there's a lot of work that goes into it. And it's a lot more dedication and a lot of time of being on the road and away from your family and not being able to go to certain things or being there for milestones and things like that. So it's always kind of important for us to be like honest with that so we can paint the picture and, just help guide people. They learn about new careers that they didn't know existed. So we are expanding that. I'm really excited. We're expanding that into next year. We're going to hit more festivals with that. We're going to hit some of our venues with that. We're starting with my region and her region first. So we're going to kind of expand it from there, but I'm really excited. I would have loved that opportunity to be in front of anybody that, had a role in the company that I wanted to be in. So we're just kind of hoping that it provides the students that opportunity.
Wow. Congratulations, Georgina. That's an incredible project. I mean, what a cool thing to say, I think I'd like to do this, and then get in front of all the people that you need to, plus get to be backstage to see, oh, this is actually what it entails, and then get to see the show. Like, I want to come be one of your students in there. I think it would be so
down. Yeah.
I'm going to come. I'll just pretend I want to be the lighting tech or something, and I'll just come jump in. But it is such an opportunity, because so often, I'm so glad that you're sharing this. Like, it's an incredible opportunity. And we're going to share in the show notes too, how people can get in touch with you, because if you're interested in, what's coming up next with Georgina, and how can you even find out more about this? Because it's incredible. And so many educators, and of course, our listeners are musicians, they are teachers, they're educators, they're in the music teaching business. And sometimes it's nice to have diversity in your career too, because that's what life is all about, right? You've done so many things in your career. And perhaps you could share a little lighthearted or funny moment from your career that still brings a smile to your face, Georgina.
Oh my God, there's so many. So we just did Power Trip Festival in India. So kind of one of our golden rule for working and just kind of across the board in entertainment is, making sure that we're not soliciting the artist, right? The artists are our clients. I didn't break the rule, but it's just kind of want to emphasize that because it goes into my story. I had a little moment because they were allowing me to go in and to decorate the Guns N' Roses dressing room area, their little area that we created for them backstage. They had trailers back there. They had, we created a really nice area for them, just where the artists can relax, where they can practice and all of that. And, when I was told that, I was like, do they know that they're probably talking to one of the people that know, like, maybe everything there is to know about like Guns N' Roses, am I sure I'm the person for this job? And they did know. They afforded me the opportunity because they were like, we know you love them so much. Like, why don't you come and fill out their dressing room? And so we were like just putting pillows. We were making sure that it looked nice. We were doing like a color scheme for them. They didn't really have anything like specific that they actually like needed or wanted the ambiance to look like. We were actually told that this was like the first time that it was like really nice and that we did such a good presentation. So we were really happy and excited about that. But I was in there with my other coworker and we were decorating, and one of the artist's managers comes out and he's like, "Oh, can I help you girls?" And I was like, yeah, I couldn't even get the words out of my mouth. My friend had to step in and she's like, "Oh, we're with Artist Hospitality. We're decorating the trailers. Like, do you need anything else from us other than what we've already done?" And I was just like, the band wasn't even there. Like, I was just talking to somebody that was on the team, and I was just like, that was just kind of like maybe an embarrassing little moment for myself that I was like, okay, I'm almost glad that the band wasn't here. And, this isn't my time right now. We'll probably cross paths someday. And I always say that I want to do it in a professional setting because I never want to be that person that's overwhelming them. Like, they get overwhelmed on the daily, right? So yeah, I think that was kind of like probably a moment where I was like, I even told my mom afterwards, and my mom was like, "They let you in the dressing room?" I was like, "I know." I was like, "I know." I was like, "I don't really know if I should be here." Like, I wanted to be here, and I did ask about it, and they made it happen for me. So yeah. I was like, "Okay, like here I am." But
and so did you take a bunch of selfies of yourself just sitting on the couch and relaxing?
As much as I wanted to, that's also a no. So there were no pictures. I think I do have a picture of like what the setup looked like.
Yeah.
but I definitely did see, like the wardrobe for Slash and Axl. And like, I saw their wardrobe guy, like kind of taking the things out that they were going to wear for the show the night after, because it was the night before that we were in there. So I definitely got to see it all. I was definitely backstage at a Guns N' Roses concert. And yeah, my mom was like, oh, that's, okay. Like, I guess they let you do that. And I was like, yeah, I guess they did.
Yeah, but it's so exciting and it's so fun when we're so passionate about, musicians and artists and what they bring to us. And it's also the music that impacts how we feel about life and memories that it triggers, right? When we hear certain songs, or you can, all the words and you can sing along. And I think too, when you reflect back on your role at AEG Presents, you oversee like several divisions. So there's a lot of unique challenges and rewards of managing such a diverse range of departments. How do you kind of handle all of that?
Yeah, I have a great support team. I don't think I could do it without them. I do manage a lot of regions across, I want to say like 4 or 5 different states. And I only say 4 or 5 different states, but touring touches every state at some point, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes there are things that happen in different states where I'm like, okay, here we go. This is kind of like a new, something new that I have to learn about an employment law for an employee that we hired in a state that I'm not familiar with, and kind of like navigating through that. But I definitely have like a really good, solid team that helps support me. I have 2 people on my team, and then I have support from above as well. So I think kind of like the best way that I would say I would manage it is just to kind of make sure that like sometimes I'm not to bring like kind of the zodiac signs in here, but there's a Capricorn in me that kind of wants to do every single thing and know every single thing and be like, hey, this is, like, I have to know everything. And I learn something new every single day. And I'm like, okay, like this is never going to stop. And that's something that I've really had to accept, because I felt like in my previous roles, I always got to that level where I was such an expert, like hospitality, like, yeah, different challenges, of course, but like it was pretty straightforward. But just like with the touring and the music and how we shift and the new ideas that we come up and the innovation that happens within our company, it's like you have to stay on top of it as well. So one of the things, like I said, that kind of like helps me manage it is just to understand, lean on my support system and understand that I'm not going to have everything figured out. And, eventually I will. And I feel like I can tell you a lot that a lot of other people probably wouldn't know about the company, but that just kind of comes with, being there for the tenure and stuff and just going through some of these challenges. But it's never a dull moment. Every day is different. I can't tell you what I do on a day-to-day, because one day it could be, supporting and helping and hiring and making sure everybody is set to go. And then another day it can be a challenge of something that happened on a tour or a venue or, et cetera. So definitely never a dull moment.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned you're a Capricorn, because I'm a Capricorn too. And so I know exactly what you're talking about when you're juggling things, and you talked about, loving to learn new things. I'm passionate. I always think if I haven't learned something new today, I've wasted a day. Like I'm obsessed with learning and growing my business, as are you, in exploring your career and, helping other people. And so I have a question for you, Miss Georgina. Yeah. So you mentioned your love of bands like the Beatles and Guns N' Roses and Pink Floyd. So if you could have dinner, we're getting personal. If you could have dinner with any member of these bands, who would it be and why?
So that's a very, very, very easy one for me. And it would be George Harrison.
Okay.
From the Beatles. Very sad. Obviously, I was old enough to remember, but I don't think it impacts me as much as it does now, or it didn't impact me as much then as it does now, because I think I was 11 in 2001 when he passed away. But post that, it started with me like understanding the music and listening to it and knowing, and then I got into the influences, and then it got to knowing the personalities of the people. And I think for me, and I think we actually just celebrated the anniversary of his passing, which was maybe like 2 days ago. And I love it every year because I find clips that people post, his wife, his son, and just some of the things and like the person that he became
Yeah.
post Beatles and like
Mhm.
understanding the world. And there's a documentary that he has called Living in the Material World that kind of just puts a lot of things in perspective. And I'm like, I would just love to sit for a whole day and just get that perspective, and to be as humble as he was, being the person that he was. I think there's something like really genuine about that. I got to meet his son and he was also incredible. Yeah, I would have loved to have dinner with George Harrison just to get his inspiring words of, wisdom. Just definitely a lot of things that he says that kind of like, helps me through just
Mhm.
life.
Yeah. And I
So,
and I think that that's why it's so wonderful when we do have all of these recordings that, I've watched some of those as well, Georgina, and more than once, because sometimes when you listen to it for the second time, impacts you in a different way. And I'm so grateful that we have the opportunity to, watch things on YouTube and experience them more than once or share them, or, it is really powerful. And how cool that you got to meet his son. How did that happen?
yeah, so they actually had, I can't remember, I think maybe it was 2014 or 15. It was called George Fest at the Fonda Theater. And I heard about it and I was like, I need to cover this show. I need to cover the show. I need to be there. They brought in, I think it was a Tom Petty kind of cover band. I think it was called the Best Fest, if I'm remembering correctly. They did a lot of things like centered around Tom Petty. And they brought in a wide array of musicians just to celebrate his life. They brought in his son. His son got on stage and sang. I think Ann Wilson from Heart was there. I even think Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys was there. Brian Jonestown Massacre. So I was like, I'm getting in. I was like, I don't know how it's happening and how I'm going to cover this show, but I'm finding a way. So I actually reached out to everybody's PR person and not remembering which artist I got to do the interview with, but I think it was Brian Jonestown Massacre, if I'm not mistaken. That's who I got to do the interview with. They invited me a press for the show. So then I got to shoot and I saw him backstage. And, I very, very kind person. And I know that he has like a really deep love for his father. And, I had to say something and I did. And I remember something about his father and being genuine. I can't even remember what. And I know I have a quote somewhere. I wrote it down somewhere because I was like, Andrea. And he was just so kind. And he was like, well, thank you for recognizing that in my father. And,
Yeah.
I can tell that there are people out in this world, and you included, that like understand that and are genuine as well. And I was like, wow, very,
Yeah.
very special. Yeah. A very
Yeah.
special moment.
Yeah, and it just touches your heart too, because in the grand scheme of life, people are people. We're all created equal on this earth, and it's our choices with how we live our life with integrity and our aspirations for what we want to become and how we want to live our life and inspire others, right, with our music. And when you look back at your upbringing, you're the oldest of two daughters in a large extended family. How was your family background and heritage? How's that influenced your career and life choices?
Yeah. So I think because my family wasn't afforded a lot of opportunities that other families did, specifically me growing up, my mom was a single mother. And I'm type 1 diabetic. So, kind of seeing like the struggles of her having to raise a kid, having to afford medicine, having to afford healthcare, having to take me to the doctor every X amount of months because, I needed it to survive, was just always kind of something that kept me like moving forward. My grandma and grandpa, her parents both came from Mexico, and still at a time where they were like accepting people to come in and just making sure they got their papers in correctly and all of those stuff, and becoming US citizens, right? And I
Yeah.
saw and I heard all of the work that my grandpa did to make sure that like his family was always taken care of, and then just kind of like the love and everything that my grandma did to support it. They had 5 girls,
Oh,
and that's kind of where it comes. Like, I'm the eldest of 17 grandkids.
oh my
So,
God.
yeah, our Christmases were crazy, but just kind of seeing that and seeing all the love and like, poured down to myself too, seeing my mom struggle and still making sure like my mom is one of the most positive people I know. And I would love to say that I am as well, but I'm not. I can be positive and I'm not like a Debbie Downer, but there's a lot of realism in me and a lot of her that she's like, okay, like it's fine, we're going to get through it. And she just has that spirit in her. And that kind of just kept like pushing me to want to do better and to move forward and to, get my degree that my other family wasn't able to, afford. And, there are so many programs now in California where it's like you can, there's a lot of aid. So those are things that they didn't have.
Right.
And, they had to work and they had to continue working. So when I had the opportunity, I just always kind of just wanting to make my parents, my grandparents just proud. And
yeah.
I'm very fortunate that my grandma is still around to kind of just see where I've gotten to because, being a little kid that would come over with her guitar every summer and just like play. And, she knew I wanted to be in music. Like she knew that was like my only option. There was no other interest outside of that. So just having her be able to see like all the things that I've done is like special for me.
Yeah, I'm sure she's really proud of you and all 17 other grandkids going like,
yes.
okay, Georgina, you set the bar pretty high and now we got to follow in your footsteps. So when you're looking at the current trends in the music industry, what advice would you give to young professionals that are aspiring, they want to build their career in music? What should they do? Where should they start?
Yeah, I love this question because I always share this with all of the college students and things. I always say that because the music industry is a very sought out career, it's very competitive. My biggest advice to people is if the opportunity doesn't present itself, create it. So I think that there is so much room specifically for people that are still in high school, specifically for people that are still in college. You're surrounded with people that are creative, that want to make music, that want to produce, find your friend that's a musician, find your friend that's a producer. If you're the person that wants to be in marketing, like market the shows, like gain the experience that way. But like the opportunity doesn't always present itself. There was a good 10-year period where I was like, I'm never getting into this industry, like I kind of looking back, I created the opportunity for myself by, helping people with their music, like helping the local musicians, like, doing the touring with them, finding the avenues, like promoting them and, getting the shows for them and doing all of that. But, to an extent. Right. But people are always like, well, they're looking for 10 to 15 years of experience before I even apply. And you can create that. You can absolutely create that. And a lot of the things that there are a lot of skills that are transferable. You don't think that a customer service rep would be transferable, but it is because you have to be able to manage relationships in this industry and, being really good at customer service, like will help serve you in that. So I think there are a lot of things that people need to understand, like in the transferable skills, but also like opportunity, like it's always there. And if it doesn't present itself, just create it.
I want to get that put on a mug, Georgina. if the opportunity doesn't present itself, create it. That's a brilliant quote. I really think, for those of you taking notes, write that down. If the opportunity doesn't present itself, create it, because that's brilliant, Georgina, because so often we go, oh, I don't have any opportunities or this and this, but you're right. Like if it's really a burning desire that you really want, then you can create opportunities. I often say, if you can't find a door that's open, just crawl through the window, like just keep going.
Yeah. There's always a way, it may not be, of course, like my dream was to work on a team that was supporting the Rolling Stones tour, right out of high school, that wasn't happening. For some people it does, and that's great. And that's fantastic. But for others, it doesn't, I went on the road in a van with 5 guys across the sea and had to make sure they were all in time we're not missing trains and planes and, like all the things to get to our next locations. So, it's not always going to be that direct path. If it is like, then, take advantage of that. But a lot of the times it's not. And that's okay.
It is a big responsibility. I have to share a short, embarrassing glory story. I produced the Ray Saint Germain show. It was a tour we did overseas in Germany, Israel, and Cyprus. And we had 27 people on tour with us. And I'm the tour manager and producer. So we get to Germany and we stop and we're all in a bus, 27 of us on the bus. And I'm always counting heads. And I had all the passports and we're at the Canadian Armed Forces. So we have to go through security and all the rest of that. And so one of the performers, Brian Glow is his name, and he tours worldwide. He's a magician and he's got a fantastic show. And he went to speak to the manager because he wanted a better rate on the exchange of the money from, Canadian dollars. And again, we're in Germany. So he goes into the manager's office. Now, in the meantime, the head major who is hosting us, he arrived in his beautiful limo and he said, "Oh, I'm going to take the producer and the headliner, which happened to be my husband. You're going to come in the limo with me because we're all going over to the barracks and we have a reception plan for you." And I'm like, "Oh, wow, that's like so fancy." So we get in the car with him and we drive off. And so the rest of the bus arrives and we're at this party. And of course, they just keep refilling all of our bottles and glasses of wine and we're eating and there's a little bit of music in the background playing. And we're having a lovely time. And, Brian walks in and he goes, "Hello." And I'm like, "Oh, hi," kind of just chit-chatting. And he said, "Didn't you miss me?" And I said, "I'm sorry." And he said, "You left me at the bank." He said, "I had to find someone who would speak English." He said, "Then when I got to the barracks, they asked me if I could actually do a magic trick to prove that I was a magician." And he said, and I finally got in there, but he said he wasn't happy. And he said, "I can't believe no one missed me." I think he was more mad about that than anything else. So there's a lot of crazy things that happen at the road. And he actually popped in to visit us not that long ago. So it was great to catch up with him. So finally, a little bit of fun for you. So if you could magically master any musical instrument overnight, which one would it be and why?
Oh, so though I'm classically trained, I wouldn't say I'm a guitar master. And it's tough because I'm always like piano because I can get through piano. I can do it. But I think I would still pick guitar. I think it just kind of like, rock and roll's just like in my soul. So like for me, I'm like, I would just love to kind of go out there and like shred a solo. And to me, shredding a solo would be like, I need to write it down on a piece of paper, on a staff, and I will go note by note and feel it. But that's like my version of what a solo would be. So I'm not by any means a master of that. Mm-hmm. So I'd say guitar. Yeah.
Until now, I'll send you magical vibes. And I do have a theory book for you if you need some help. Ha ha ha.
Well, would love it.
Well, Georgina, it has been such a delight. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and your insights with us today. Your experiences and obviously perspectives just kind of truly are inspiring for our listeners and for me too, especially those looking to make their mark in the music industry. How can our listeners learn a little more about you, your music, and how to connect with you?
Yeah, so definitely I have a website in which I put my personal contact information, and I'll share that with you so you can share with the audience. And then shameless, but I'm an Instagram girl. So I'm always on Instagram. So if you can't get a hold of me, I am good at responding to emails. But if people always try LinkedIn, and I do love LinkedIn. LinkedIn is great. I encourage people to use it. I'm really bad at it. I try my best. I really do try my best. But I think the influx kind of just between people trying to sell you things, it's hard to dig through all of that to get to the actual people that want to connect. Yeah. So that's kind of what I'll say about that. So if you've found my Instagram, I know that, all the students have it. It's a social media platform. That's a good way. And again, my website that has my email address on it. And then I can kind of tell you about all the programs at AEG, keep an eye out for them too. There's a lot of things we do. We do internships. We have our college connection program. And there are a lot of line level positions that we look for festivals that are fairly easy to get into. So definitely check out the AEG Presents website.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. It's just really been a delight. Just so looking forward to staying connected with you. And hopefully we'll get to hook up at the NAMM show coming up and lots of other things and activities in Las Vegas. I know we're going to enjoy those together. That brings us to the end of another intriguing episode of the Ultimate Music Teachers Productivity and Profitability Podcast. Again, we'll leave the links in the show notes for you to connect with Georgina. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We hope this conversation has inspired you to think deeply about the power of music and its role in the world. So keep tuning in for more inspiring stories and insights on education and entrepreneurship. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for Ultimate Music Teachers Podcast. If you love today's podcast, leave us a review, share it with your fellow music enthusiasts. So until next time, keep the music playing and let your musical mind make a difference in the world. Thanks and have a magical musical day. Bye now. Thanks for listening to the Ultimate Music Teachers Productivity and Profitability Podcast. Together, we can transform lives through the power of music education. I invite you to explore what's possible for your musical journey inside our UMT community. Simply join our Ultimate Music Teachers private Facebook group where we network, answer questions, host live events, and connect on a deeper level. Here's to your ultimate music teaching success with productivity and profitability. Till next time, teach with passion.